Hello and welcome to Fantasy Focus Football. It is Monday. I don't even know what day it is. Monday,
29th.
January 29th. My name is Daniel Dopp. Today's show is presented by Geico. Switch to Geico. See all the ways that you could save. I am here with Mike Clay and Field Yates. Guys, I have not seen you in weeks. I did the last two shows with Stefania. So, Mike, I'm going to start with you. How you been? What's been going on? Where you been at, buddy?
I've been around. I'm trying to remember your names. Fiddler?
Yes,
Fiddler.
Yep.
Yours
Fiddler
starts with-
Fortenbaugh. Yeah,
yours starts
catch me
with
on
a
ESPN Bet
D?
Live.
Yes.
Yeah.
Starts with a D.
Demetrius.
Is it
Yeah.
Jethro?
Jethro.
That's
what it.
Jethro and Fiddler. That's it.
Yeah.
Got it. No, it's been a while. I've been doing a lot of off-season prep, getting the depth charts ready. Pulling the free agents. Got the free agent cheat sheet ready. Doing a little early, maybe 1% of where you are on rookies.
Yeah.
You know, because you've been doing this like the whole year. So getting started on that. But yeah, there's always a lot to do.
Yes.
And not to mention props and stuff for
all the playoff games.
So there's still a lot to do. It's
11 and 13 yesterday.
What's that?
11 for 13 yesterday on your props.
Mm-hmm.
Not
yeah,
bad.
The playoffs are rolling. I think
people who are listening to the show have a choice. They can either continue to not make any money, or they can listen to Mike Clay and they can make a lot of money.
Yep.
Yeah, it's
ESPN
been
Bet.
we're on fire. So at some point we're going to come back to earth a little bit, but that column.
You are the Patrick Mahomes of bettors right now. Betting analysts.
right.
I'm gonna enjoy the ride while
oh my God.
This is the problem with being
modest. Yeah.
This is the problem with being like doing this job for a long time, is you know you're gonna have some dips sometimes.
It's gonna happen.
It's just a really high variance, volatile game, but I'm enjoying the ride right now. We're rolling, and hopefully we'll do it again for the Super Bowl.
Field, you're in the middle of a ride right now too, because I just saw you on television like 12 seconds
still
ago,
happening.
and then
Yeah.
you ran over here to part of this.
I know, like, shout out to the people that are watching this show on YouTube while watching First Drafts on ESPN2, because
That's right.
Starting today, First Draft every Monday, 2 p.m. Eastern time on ESPN2. Really cool thing we're doing for the ESPN podcast. And as everybody who watches this show religiously knows, during the season, Mondays and Fridays, we were on ESPN2 at 2 p.m. Eastern time. Now ESPN is like, well, Daniel and Mike and Stefania crush it so much with that we're going to make podcasts an everyday thing, Monday through Friday. So Hoop Collective, Meet a Kind show featuring Lenny, excuse me. We have First Draft. We have Al Duncan show, and number 5, I'm forgetting.
There's
which
another
is,
one.
Low Post, of course. The Great Low Post, which
Zach.
to me might be the best podcast in the world. So, First Draft, a lot of fun. So I don't know. So the draft is 3 months away. I was going to say knee deep, but it's higher up than knee, not quite neck deep. We're like, hip deep.
Belly
in draft
button deep.
Yeah, belly deep in draft prospects, guys. I tell you what. Preparing to be like a draft analyst for a draft in which there are 256 players taken, but there's like 650 guys that could be taken.
Yeah, remember, all them teams are going to sign like 20 players after the draft.
Yeah. So I'm not looking for sympathy here. I'm just noting that I spend a lot of time watching players. I watched a player over the weekend who attended a school that I literally never heard of. He finished his college career at Texas A&M Commerce, which Dolphins fans, I'm forgetting his first name now, but Kohu, their cornerback, they signed as an undrafted free agent 2 years ago, Caden Kohu, who's become a good player for them, by the way. Went to Texas A&M Commerce. His, not teammate, but I guess they went to the same school, Levi LDR. That's what Mel calls him.
Okay,
Levi
LDR.
Damian Rodriguez. Levi Drake Rodriguez. Gosh, I'm really screwing this one up. But he finished up at Texas A&M Commerce after spending 4 years at Southwest. What was it? It's SAGU. Southwest Assemblies of the God University.
Oh,
All right.
wow.
So we're out of time on the pod today. It was a good show.
It was a good one.
Big sleeper right there. Big sleeper.
I'll tell you what, here's what we're going to do. We're going to actually, in today's show, I know we're talking about some of these draft prospects, Field. We're going to go through and look at the 2 championship games that we just had, recap them very quickly, and then also, as a part of that, look at some of the rookies that we had in this and project ahead, Field, with some of the conversation that you have had.
Do it. Let's go.
Let's dive in then. Let's talk about Chiefs-Ravens really quickly. Guys, I thought the Ravens were going to win this game.
Me too.
So did I.
Yeah, so
And
did I.
instead,
All
the
three of us
Kansas
did,
City
apparently.
Chiefs, this one caught me off guard. I was a little bit surprised. Patrick Mahomes, though, looked fantastic in this one. What were your initial takeaways, Field, when watching the Ravens unfortunately lose to the Chiefs?
Yeah, 2 things here. First of all, is that I will be forevermore a year, a month, a week too late to pick against the Chiefs than I will be a week too early, right? Like, they've got the competitive spirit that I think is one of those things that is hard to find, but when you see it, you know it, right?
Yep.
The Chiefs have that. They are like the relentless boxer who can just find one more round of punches within them somewhere. But the second thought was, The Chiefs are emblematic of what we talk about when, like, you know, the cliches, like, you know, what's it like, pressure makes diamonds or something like that. When the moments get bigger, you as an athlete either respond to the moment in a positive way or a negative way. And it seems like the Chiefs find a way to play their best when it matters the most. And for however many years going forward, they have Patrick Mahomes under center. I don't care if they go 17-0 during the regular season or if they sort of stumble their way through the year like they did this year, 11-6, including like bad losses, at home on Christmas to the Raiders with zero offensive output. Like, the Chiefs in the playoffs kick it up a notch, and they did that yesterday. And the Ravens, not here to debate Lamar Jackson's greatness, because he is terrific and he is unbelievably great and a deserved 2-time NFL MVP in 10 days from right now. But until they get over that hump of consistently playing to the moment in the playoffs, that's the question we're going to ask is, does this Baltimore team have that next gear that Kansas City has shown, Mike?
Yeah, I'm with you. And I think if they played this game 10 times, I think Baltimore still might have won it 8 times.
That's the beauty of the NFL, right?
The Chiefs came out strong, and then the Ravens were arguably better the rest of the game, maybe over 2 quarters.
How about the Chiefs in the second half? You know what their drive chart was? 6 offensive drives. Punt, 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 punt.
Yeah.
End of game.
The Ravens just couldn't finish off drives, just too many boneheaded mistakes. There was the Zay Flowers drive, of course. I mean, he is such a good player, but
that was the full experience.
He makes 2 better decisions in this game, they might win the game. I mean, that's how close this game was, even though maybe it didn't feel like it throughout. But it was really disappointing. And I will say this, though, on your comment about the Chiefs. I don't know if I fully agree that they've shown to step up in clutch times, because they've just been dominant since Mahomes' breakout, nonstop, all the way through from week 1 to the Super Bowl. This is the first time where they've really stumbled during the regular season and then kind of made the big leap in the playoffs. So it's a different element. And I think they know that too. I think they've been pretty clear that people were doubting us for the first time, and we're showing them. And they've been great, but it's going to be interesting. I don't know when we'll do this, but picking the Super Bowl is going to be tough.
Okay. So my only retort to your retort is that while they have been dominant in prior seasons, I think it's very difficult. And this is reflected in the fact that we have not had a repeat champion since 2003 and 2004 to be the team that just won the championship, because for the past 5 seasons, every team has circled the Chiefs on their calendar. So I just have respect for the Chiefs and the fact that when you go to Kansas City or when you're playing host to Kansas City, the game means a little bit more. They typically respond to the moment, and they have done so in back-to-back weeks for 2 teams that I really believe felt like the door was finally open. Buffalo playing these guys at home. We're the team that's been hot, that has not lost and has lost like 1 game in 2 months or something like that. And if you're Buffalo and you're Baltimore right now, I get it. Every fan base is wired differently. I feel like Bills fans maybe like a little more beaten down. Ravens fans a little bit more like our time is still going to happen at some point later. But if you're either of those fan bases right now, you are waking up this morning saying, like, if we can't get these guys when they're 11-6 and it feels like Travis Kelce has lost a step, when are we ever going to get them?
Well, Travis Kelce didn't look like he lost a step, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on him because I want to talk about some of the other guys. But he had 11 catches for 116 yards on 11 targets, by the way. I mean, you talked about struggled all year long, right? It wasn't the Travis Kelce, but big guys shows up in big games.
Oh, God, is he awesome.
This was the epitome of that. Yeah. When I look at this, though, I want to focus on 2 guys. I want to talk about some of the rookies.
Right. Great.
Zay Flowers looked fantastic in spite of the 2 plays that happened, unfortunately, guys, going into the end zone, losing that fumble. And another one of those boneheaded things. I know you're frustrated, but when you smash your helmet on the ground and then you cut your hand afterwards, like, that's one of those things, like, you got to keep your composure.
And the personal foul, like, it was just
that was not great. But 5 for 115 and a touchdown for Zay Flowers, and Rashee Rice, 9 targets, 8 for 46. Both of these guys were incredible all year long as far as rookie wide receivers go. Field, I want to kind of look forward, understanding that we've got these guys here that we're talking about. When you look at next year's rookie draft class, Marvin Harrison Jr. seems to be the de facto wide receiver 1. Looking back at the last couple draft classes, how would he fit in if we were trying to compare him to some of the rookies that we've seen recently?
Yeah, people need to understand that how we view prospects going into the draft as opposed to how we view them 1 or 2 seasons into their NFL careers is obviously very different. So wash away what you think of Puka Nacua right now and rewind 10 months and think about what you thought of Puka Nacua at that time.
Right.
Marvin Harrison Jr. is probably the most touted wide receiver prospect to enter the draft since potentially Julio Jones back in 2012. And think about the players that we've seen in that time, right? Like Jahmyr Gibbs was all kinds of highly rated, right?
Yep.
Like we've had other guys that have been drafted in the top 5, top 7. Sammy Watkins was a player that the team that ended up drafting in the Bills traded an extra first-round pick to move up and get. So we have certainly seen acclaimed wide receivers, but it feels like Marvin Harrison Jr. is the best prospect. And I admit, like, I haven't been doing this role that I'm doing now. This is my first year doing it, so it's not like I've been doing it for the past 10 years. But the general feel that I get in talking to people that either have been doing this role or people that have been scouting is that Marvin Harrison stacks up to pretty much any wide receiver prospect for the last decade, maybe even further. Mel Kiper Jr. says the last grade this robust for a wide receiver he gave out was Calvin Johnson in 2007.
And how did he turn out? Is he any good?
I mean, you know, if like making the Hall of Fame after playing like a pretty short period of time relative to most wide receivers is good, then yeah.
Yes, that's pretty good. Yeah.
Right. He's decent.
I just remember they drafted a lot of receivers back then. And
They did.
So I wasn't sure which ones worked. That one
The
worked
other
out.
Mike
That
Williams
one
was number 2 overall, right?
That's right.
Yeah, they were. Yeah, there's a bunch up there.
Charles Rogers, also
Charles
number 2
Rogers.
overall.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So I'm with you. So I mean, you talk about Flowers and Rice, and they were 2 guys that had, you know, in Flowers' case, first-round pick.
Yep.
In Rice's case, a second-round pick. They both had terrific rookie seasons. They could be top 15 fantasy receivers next year, and still, from a dynasty perspective, you want Harrison on your team. I mean, he's still the better prospect with a much higher ceiling than those guys.
Even without knowing, right now you're saying that we don't even know where Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to go. Would you still have him ranked higher in Dynasty, or is that based on where he falls?
Yeah, I'll slot him in higher in Dynasty. You know, we can get into some of those names in the range he'd be, but I'm thinking more like Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, and you know, you might even put him ahead of them if you really believe he's the real deal. The only thing he hasn't done that these guys have is play at this level, at a high level. And honestly, you can make the case Wilson Olave, guys like that haven't really shown. They haven't had a top 5 season, top 10 season.
Not yet, yeah.
Harrison is a guy we view as could be the number 1 scoring receiver soon.
Yeah.
So no doubt.
Let me ask you this, Mike, understanding from the other direction, right? Where does Marvin Harrison Jr. fall on that list? How far down is that cutoff? Who do you have ahead of him if you're talking about that? Or is it a pretty big list of wide receivers?
I mean, I think just because of what you're pointing out, what your observations are, that this is such an elite prospect. This should be the next Justin Jefferson, Tyreek Hill, you know, whatever, Calvin Johnson level producer in fantasy. He has to be borderline top 5, certainly top 10. So that's, you know, we're talking, you know, Justin Jefferson's going to be 1 most likely, and you know, you're probably
CeeDee Lamb,
like probably 2. You know, Tyreek Hill's probably like 4 or 5. He's going to be 30 years old, so you have to factor that in. But Harrison's right in that range. I mean, that's right where he should be in these rankings.
People need to remember as well, Jahmyr Chase, guys like that, is that we have an historically deep wide receiver position right now.
Yep,
that's right. Yeah.
So and the league has changed, right? I mean, 20 years ago, quarterbacks were like, there was a time growing up where it was a big deal for us if a quarterback had 3,000 passing yards in a season. Think about that now. Like you look at stat lines and you're like, that guy's threw for 3,200 yards this year. That's an awful year, right? Like 4,000 is the minimum threshold. So the game has changed a lot. There's a lot more wide receiver depth. So yes, Marvin Harrison Jr. probably belongs in that top 10-ish dynasty wide receiver conversation. But I also understand if there are people who like certainty in life and they say, oh, I can name, and you know, Jahmyr Chase, Tyreek Hill, CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Puka Nacua, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, J.J. Brown. There's 9 right there without really even thinking about it. You're like, okay,
seriously.
Pause on the top 10 dynasty talk, but he's a special player. And while we don't know where he'll land, I think there is a real chance that he goes 4th overall to the Arizona Cardinals. And while Kyler may be imperfect, we've certainly seen Kyler support, you know, big offensive seasons for pass catchers. And wouldn't surprise me if he was the wide receiver and passing game option 1 for Arizona from the moment he gets drafted.
Maybe a dumb question.
No
Maybe
such thing.
But like, obviously his dad is a Hall of Famer, Marvin Harrison.
Yeah.
Right. Like how does he stack up like physically to his father? Was he the same kind of player? Does he play similarly to that?
No, they're so different, which is crazy. Is his dad, you know, Marvin Harrison, obviously Hall of Fame player, amazing. But like diminutive relative to Marvin Jr. Marvin Jr. is like 6'3", 6'4". Marvin Harrison Sr. was like 5'11", right? He was just like this unbelievable route runner who caught everything that came his way. It was the perfect blend of his skill set and the offense that he played. And they were so far ahead of their time in Indianapolis with the way that they were operating. But Marvin's going to play on the perimeter. Remember, the Colts legendarily like kept their receivers on one side of the formation. They never moved. Like that's probably not going to be how Marvin Jr. is deployed. The combine, if he participates, will be interesting because I'm not so sure that he'll be He may not be a 4.35 guy, but whatever it is, it's going to look more effortless than it should. He is a pretty darn fluid guy for someone who is 6'3", 6'4".
Yeah. Well, understanding that he is the clear-cut number one wide receiver in this class, Field, when you look at the rest of the wide receivers, how do they stack up? Again, trying to compare them. I want to assume that people haven't watched college football, right? Yeah. That's the part of like why you listen to First Draft, because you're able to get such a good baseline for that. So if we don't know any of those things, what other wide receivers stack up in this class?
I think it's a 3 wide receiver class at the very top.
Okay.
But there's going to be a whole lot more that could go in the first round. So Marvin Harrison Jr., wide receiver 1, simultaneously like the clear-cut wide receiver 1. But I'm also such a fan of Malik Nabers from LSU that the gap is not like that crazy large. Like if Marvin Harrison's a 96, 97 on the 1 to 100 scale, Malik Nabers might be like 93, 94. This guy's the real deal. Unbelievable season this past year. 14 receiving touchdowns, up over 17 yards per catch. I think is the most explosive player, regardless of position, in the entire draft class. Now, there's 3 stars from this LSU offense that are all going to be drafted probably in the first round. His quarterback, Jayden Daniels, is his wide receiver teammate, Brian Thomas Jr. So people are going to make the argument that like LSU had more support around it. And like Jayden helped the receivers helped Jayden, et cetera, et cetera. Isolate the receivers from each other and from the quarterback, and you can still see a guy who can flat out fly. I have made the comparison to Stephon Diggs prior to the last 11 weeks of the season when Stephon was actually producing. But the ability to stretch the field vertically and plus the ability to just chew up defenses in like the 8 to 10 yard range and turn those into 12, 14, 17, 20 yard plays. Absolutely love him. I'd be incredibly surprised if he wasn't a top 7 or 8 pick.
Wow.
And then Odunze, by the way, Washington. I might as well keep it rolling here. I love this guy too. Like it feels terrible to me that I have to rank him as the 3rd best wide receiver on my board. He's 6'2", 215, 218 pounds. Up over 1,600 receiving yards. Most consistent player in college football, as Mel Kiper Jr. often reminds people. The number 1 wide receiver for Michael Penix Jr. out there at Washington. Yep. There was no answer for him. They run a lot of wide receiver screens to that offense. He's excellent in that regard. Really good down the field. Excellent in 50-50 situations. He's terrific in the red zone. He's got a big build. Like, I don't know that I have a perfect comparison for a guy like Odunze. Early in the process, I thought maybe some shades of Michael Pittman Jr., but the way that Pittman Jr. has been used in Indianapolis, or at least was this year, is not really how Odunze was used for Washington. He's much more of a vertical presence than Pittman was this year, but I love him. I think he's awesome. I think all 3 of these players are locks as top 10 picks. Like stone cold, no 2 ways about it, locks.
Wow. That's interesting because you think about, you know, I looked at like the rookies from the last couple of years at wide receiver, and we just talked about some of them. Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, let's say Puka Nacua. Let's say that's your top tier of those guys, right? After that, it would be Jackson Smith and Jigba, Drake London, Rashee Rice, Zay Flowers, Jordan Addison, guys like that. So JSN, you know, and actually all the receivers picked last year, all 4 of them were picked consecutively in the
20, 21, 22, 23.
Right. So you think about 3 receivers who could potentially go top 10, top 12. I mean, where do they slot in for you? I mean, if we're talking Garrett Wilson, Olave, Nacua, then JSN, are you putting all 3 of them between that tier? Or are you putting them along with someone like Nacua, Olave? Where do they belong?
For dynasty rankings, you're saying? These guys going forward? So I think that landing spot's going to determine a little bit of it for all these guys.
I was going to say, Marvin Harrison Jr. makes it easier without a landing spot. Do the other 2 more need a landing spot?
No, honestly, like, here's the nice thing is like the landing spots actually kind of shape up, I think, fairly well for each of these guys, because I think pick 5 is in play for one of them. Justin Herbert, they could use another wide receiver because both Mike Williams and Keenan Allen have inflated cap charges for 2024, the final year of their deals.
Mike Williams is also 30 coming off an ACL tear.
Yeah, so I mean, like it would be, you can imagine a team that's sort of starting anew with Jim Harbaugh, Malik Nabers, and Justin Herbert. I mean, we might be talking about him coming out of the gates as a top 20 redraft option, which a top 20 rookie redraft option usually equates to like a top 7 or 8 dynasty option, right?
And what we've seen from rookies the last couple of years too, even Nacua, even the target shares for Flowers out, and right? Garrett Wilson, we could be talking top 10 right out of the gate. Totally. No doubt about it.
So, and then with whether Odunze goes ahead of Malik Nabers or vice versa, you keep going down the board. The Giants at pick 6 certainly need a wide receiver. I'm not saying that Daniel Jones is Justin Herbert, but Daniel Jones threw for 4,000 plus yards last year, right? Like it's not like he can't orchestrate a passing offense. Number 7, Will Levis, Titans. They certainly need help at the wide receiver spot. Falcons, probably not, but you never know. And then the Bears at number 9, who could be taking a wide receiver to supplement a quarterback they've taken at pick number 1. To me, all good landing spots for these guys to either be the primary receiver in their offense or the secondary receiver if it's an offense like Chicago. All 3 of the guys that I just mentioned, Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Nabers, and Odunze, I'm doing this somewhat blind. Top 25 dynasty wide receivers the minute they enter the NFL.
All right, so let me ask you this question, and this is a little bit loosey-goosey, right? You look at 2024, wide receivers were Garrett Wilson, J-Mo, Chris Olave, Drake London. That was a pretty good list. I mean, Jameson Williams is not coming along as well, and we want to see more from Drake London, but 2022 was really good. Last year, Rashee Rice, Zay Flowers, Tank Dell, who was a little bit later in that list, Jaden Reed, Puka Nacua, Jordan Addison.
I mean, it's tough. Like, I'm saying top 25, and then you're like naming some guys that I'm like, dang, you know, like Tank Dell has already got a chance to become C.J. Stroud's long-term number 1 wide receiver.
Which is crazy, right? It highlights the fact of what you talked about, how the NFL is such a pass-heavy league now that these guys are going to get more opportunities than what we have seen in recent years. So when you look at this, I mean, I understand we need these guys to be on teams, but like the way you talk about Marvin Harrison Jr. and Odunze and like Malik Nabers, it makes it sound like this might be the best wide receiver class out of the last 3, 4, 5 years, potentially.
Maybe more than that. I asked this question to Mel, who's been doing this for 40 plus years. He invented the industry, and he was like, I mean, we're going deep into the archives to find a class that has as much wide receiver talent, because beyond these 3, who themselves make this a headlining class. Like I was looking at, I've been working on my big board, and it's it's constantly shuffling with the All-Star games taking place, and players that I thought were going to come out that decided to go back to school and vice versa. And I think that like calling a player a first-round prospect can be a little bit of a fool's errand, because there are certain years where there's not that many first-round grades. There are certain years where there's maybe more first-round grades than there are picks. But like I plausibly can make a case for like 11 of the top 40 to 45 players in the draft being wide receivers.
Wow.
Which is wild.
That is wild.
On the one hand, that means that we could have 7 or 8 go in the first round. On the other hand, teams may say, why would I bother taking a wide receiver at 15 if I could get the 7th best receiver rather than the 5th best receiver at pick 45 or something?
Yeah, the middle of the second.
But at some point, the pause will start.
But there's just, I feel like we've had, not at this level, but we've had a lot of good receiver classes in the last 5-6 years. There's only so many targets to go around. You know what I mean? This is getting tricky. Think about it. If most teams are in 11 personnel, 3 receivers on the field, there's 32 teams. That's 96 receivers. So you could rank a guy 60th, and you're going to be like, I'm disrespecting this guy a lot. But you're like, I could see him 35th as well. I mean there's just, think about Jameson Williams. He's going into year 3. He's a top 10 prospect.
Yeah.
We've seen his explosion. We saw it yesterday. I mean, this is a guy that no doubt could finish wide receiver 7 in fantasy next year, and we wouldn't be totally shocked. He has that pedigree, right? He has that upside. But how do you rank him ahead of any of the guys we just talked about? I mean, he just hasn't done it. There's so many guys that have tremendous upside right now or are in great positions, or some that are in both. So it's such a tough position to evaluate because there's so many good options.
Well, the other reality is that there is a touch of like driving a car off the lot to the NFL draft, in the sense that, I don't know how many cars become more valuable the minute you drive them off a lot, but we know that all of them can become less valuable, right? And like, as great and as much as I love the NFL draft, and as much as I hope to be as accurate and thorough and thoughtful with my analysis, I'm also accepting the minute that I start this process that, like the NFL, I'm going to be wrong often, right? I saw someone ripping on draft analysts a couple of days ago about how, like, they constantly get these quarterback evaluations wrong. And I'm like, listen, if you think they're like, I will take, if I sit here and tell you for the next 3 months that I think Jayden Daniels is a top 5 pick and a top 3 player on my board, and he goes in the middle of the second round, I'll tell you I'm wrong, right? But if I tell you that, if I say he's a top 3 player on my board and he goes number 2 overall, the NFL is also telling you that. So it's not the draft analysts unto themselves get these things wrong. It's that the NFL itself, right? Like, Sam Darnold was the 3rd pick in the draft. Does that mean that the people that were pounding the table for Sam Darnold in the media were morons? mean, the Jets took him 3rd overall, right? So maybe the issue should be with the team. And by the way, if it wasn't the Jets at 3, it was going to be somebody else at 4 or 5. That's just how this industry and how this sector of football development works. So yes, as much as we like all these guys, I'm mindful of the fact that 2-3 years from now, I could be talking about, Adonai Mitchell is like the 2026 version of Rashad Bateman, a guy that I loved coming out of college. And all of a sudden it's like, yeah, he's okay.
Yeah.
By the way, success in the NFL does correlate with draft pedigree.
Yeah,
so
it does.
Analyst teams are really good. And by the way, I know sometimes mock drafts can be chaotic, and we have these mock drafts and we all read them. Then we come to the draft and a guy falls to the 2nd round or something like, Malik Willis. That happens sometimes. But for the most part, you're not totally shocked. Everyone's sort of going in the range where they actually end up going in the draft. So the NFL is just human beings that get to that level and are studying the tape just like you are and deciding who they think the best players are. And they have more resources, obviously, but and you're right. I mean, the league's going to be wrong sometimes. We're going to be wrong sometimes. It's part of it. Just like fantasy, just like betting. It's just like the criticism going on of analytics right now.
Yeah.
It's like, if you're using analytics, it has to be right 100% of the time, or it's not useful. Yeah. It's just complete embarrassing nonsense. But yeah, you're right. You need a process, and you follow that process over time. It's going to work out more often than it's not.
Yep. One player that teams did not follow the process on.
Yep.
Was 49ers quarterback Brock Purdy. And shout out to him for a huge win over my Detroit Lions in the NFC Championship game. Well, no, let's talk about it. I haven't talked about it with anyone. I'm going to be very clear. I've called my dad after the game.
Okay.
I've not talked about this game to anyone else over the last 16 hours because
smart man.
Really don't want to.
Why? I can't believe
I don't want to dive into it.
This could go a lot of directions.
This could go a lot of places. I'll tell you what.
Beep button available right now?
49. No. First half, Detroit Lions looked good, right? Second half, the 49ers looked better. And that was one of those situations where you see this team, you see what Brock Purdy did, you see all the pieces that are available to the 49ers. They have so many weapons on offense. Yeah. It's unbelievable. Shout out to them being able to make it. And congratulations to Stephania Bell and Papa Bell and Mama Bell for being able to have another Super Bowl that they get to watch. For the Lions, everything started out as good as it possibly could have. That first half was as good as it possibly could have been. You saw them utilizing their stars, Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, Sam Laporta, J-Mo. Amon-Ra St. Brown. And then in that second half, it's just like, you know what? Defense got tougher. Didn't make the same adjustments that the 49ers did. So all
unforced errors.
It was just a handful of plays. It was just a handful of plays.
The fact that the Josh Reynolds dropped 2 passes, that's really tough.
Yep.
That missed interception that became a touchdown, like that's brutal.
By the way, you know why they did not lose? Dan Campbell going forward on 4th down. So let's just
don't even want to get into the analytics.
Stop embarrassing yourself out there.
Do you have a take or no, Daniel?
Yeah, I trust Dan Campbell in analytics 100% of the time.
Yeah, they've been doing it for years, and we applaud him all the time, and it's great. And both 4th down attempts were borderline calls. In fact, when they went for it, I didn't even bat an eye. It made perfect. It was logical. Like you could have said, okay, you could try a long field goal, fine, but it made sense to go for it.
Michael Badgley this year, so Michael Badgley in his career. A 50% field goal kicker from over 50 yards, by the way.
And he hits over 45 yards.
What if he missed it? Then he'd be great and criticized for kicking it when he's been going all year. It's just complete 100%. Nonsense. There was nothing wrong with those calls. I applaud him for being aggressive. And that's been a big part of why that offense has been good all year long.
Yeah, you have to make a decision as Mike's phone goes off here. You have to decide in life whether you want to be a process or results-driven person. And I think that being process-driven is a fundamental part of the job that we have in fantasy football. Sometimes the results get you, right? Sometimes Jerick McKinnon just keeps scoring receiving touchdowns in 8 straight games or something ridiculous, right? Sometimes the process gets you, right? Sometimes the process rules the roost, where you start to sniff things out that you're like, there's no way this can keep going. And then guys who for the first month of this regular season look like stars, all of a sudden are terrible and hot garbage for the rest of the season. That's how it works. It's tough. Mike, I think, did a nice job of capturing it very succinctly with Dan Campbell, is that if you're going to spend all year applauding Dan Campbell's aggression and conviction and belief in his players, and then get mad at him because he decided to believe in his players, his offense specifically, then I think you're speaking out of both sides of your mouth. The only call that I vehemently disagree with was at the end of the game when they decided to run the ball on 3rd and goal from the 1-yard line, because there's a significant risk there. If you don't score right away, you are absolutely, basically, you are just sacrificing a timeout, which then means that rather than kicking it deep and opening the door to 3 straight stops on the ground, getting a punt, and maybe having 40 or so seconds to try a field goal eventually, you are saying we have to convert an onside kick. that rate is extremely low.
That was tough.
Everything else was fine by me.
Agreed.
It was fine. And you know what? The cool part about Dan Campbell is I'm sure he's frustrated. I'm sure he's sad. I'm sure he's thought about it, maybe considered doing things differently. But like, he knows what the circumstances are and he knows the consequences of his actions.
Yep.
He believes in it.
He doesn't run away from that.
Yeah, nothing will change next year. They're probably gonna have a new play caller, which is. But otherwise, I was pulling. I immediately do this. I start pulling the free agents off the rosters, moving them to a free agent list. Most of the Lions are back next year.
Yeah, they'll
the
have
line will be back off. Gibbs, Montgomery's under contract. You got St. Brown. You got Jameson, Laporta. The defense is almost completely there, and that's a young group that's just going to get better next year. I mean, the Lions. That division is going to be awesome next year. We haven't said that in a while.
All four trending up,
especially if Kirk Cousins comes back to Minnesota. Chicago better. Packers obviously super young team, but that might be the division to watch next year. It's going to be fun.
Yep.
Yeah. I'll say this. In looking at this Lions team all year long, so much fun as a Lions fan to be able to ride the wave as long as I could. The best Lions season I have ever been a part of as a fan in my 41 years of being alive on this earth. So I would not trade any of it. In spite of the fact that we lost, I would not trade a single moment of it because I got to watch some awesome football with my family in a way that like it's never been more important than what it was.
If people haven't, they should go check out the piece that was on Sunday Countdown yesterday about the Lions fans. Like brought me to tears.
That was very good.
Like,
that was
the power
really
of
good.
Sports is something that all of us believe in, and you are the youngest looking 41-year-old of all time, Daniel. Congratulations.
Appreciate that.
But it's been really cool to see just how happy this season has made you and how much you and the entire city of Detroit deserve this, and no shame in the effort from these guys this year. They accomplished a whole lot, and football is this unpredictable sport. Other than Patrick Mahomes, nothing is inevitable. But I got a feeling that this Lions team, this is just the beginning and not like the one missed shot, right? This is not
we're doing this field, Yates.
We're Dan Campbell, and we're not the team that is, got that one window and we've tried to barge through it. Instead, it got slammed shut on us. So, big fan of what the Lions accomplished this year, and nowhere to go. Oh, I guess there is other ways to go.
Some more ways to go.
But he's going to go up.
Yeah,
they are
watched
going
the
to go
Eagles
up
season this year.
Yes, I know.
I'll tell you what, not everyone was a fan of the Lions draft this year, but one of the things that they did well, they hit on basically everybody, and that started with Jahmyr Gibbs. He looked unbelievable at the running back position. All year long, this kid is set up to be a stud. And I don't want to just focus on Jahmyr Gibbs. Let's kind of move this forward like we did with the wide receivers. It was really Jahmyr Gibbs and Bijan Robinson. Those were the two first-round wide receivers that we saw this year, Mike.
Running backs,
but sorry, did I say wide receivers? Running backs.
Yep.
When you look back at these two, anything stand out about the running backs that came out of the 2023 draft class?
I mean, I think they were both deployed very similarly. They finished lower in carries, but obviously super high in targets, receptions, all the receiving work. Gibbs super effective on the ground. We thought he might be more of a playmaker in the passing game, which he was, but his effectiveness on the ground was outstanding. Actually, 5th in yards per carry, and his yards per target was kind of low. So I thought that was kind of interesting deployment, but got better as the year went on. A lot of work near the goal line, even with David Montgomery scoring all those touchdowns. So love Gibbs. He's in position for a larger workload next year and another step forward in fantasy. And Bijan,
new head coach.
That's really what it comes down to.
This one's a nowhere to go but up.
That's
where I was trying to use that phrase at.
Yeah, that's totally fair. Zach Robinson comes in, and it's funny. There was just a quote out there on social, and I'll just let the source go. But a source from one of our competitors said a coach told him that basically that people that use analytics are just people that can't get into the NFL or they can't be coaches. That kind of complete explicative, but anyway, gets under my skin. Zach Robinson used to grade players at PFF. I mean, this is a guy that after he was a player in the NFL, thought that was it for him. He went to PFF, learned a lot, impressed Sean McVay. He's been there for the last 5 years, now has an offensive coordinator job, and will call plays for Kyle Pitts and Drake London and Bijan Robinson and Raheem Morris, one of the most respected assistant coaches in the league that now becomes a head coach. So he joins Bobby Slowick, who used to grade players at PFF as well. Yeah. These guys are going to use next level decision-making, call it analytics if you want, whatever it is. I'm very heated about this.
Yes, I can tell. I love it.
I've been kind of keeping quiet on it for the most part at social, but it's driving me nuts because people are so just idiotic about this topic. But these guys are going to bring next generation football to these offenses, as we saw with Slowick this year with C.J. Stroud, and as we're going to see in Atlanta. They need a quarterback, but once they solve that, really excited for what Robinson could do with these guys.
Do you know who loves analytics for decision making in the games? Bill Belichick, another guy who couldn't get a job other than if he
maybe
couldn't get a job in the NFL.
Just one of the new young guys.
You know what?
That just cares about the stats.
That's a guy that knows he needs to go to PFF, and then like those other guys, he can finally get out and do something with his life afterwards.
Taking intentional safeties back in the day. Remember, we had this big long gap. I think it was like 15 years from a coach down 14, scoring a touchdown and going for 2 as opposed to going for 1. The calculus behind that, in case people missed it somehow, last week, statistically, you are likely to convert a 2-point conversion at a higher than 50% rate, which means if you run 2 2-point conversions, the likelihood of you scoring at least 2 points is higher than exactly 2 points, which is what you would infer by kicking the field goal. Thus, if you do it and you convert it on the first try, you're down by 6 and you have a chance to win the game in regulation. If you miss it on the first try, the odds are you're going to convert it on the second try, tie ball game. We're back at square one. The last coach to have done that prior to that big gap was Bill Belichick himself. So listen, man, it's I've tried to be less online. The draft job has helped me. And being less online for conversations like Brock Purdy as a game manager, analytics is a thing or not, that stuff, it's helped my mental health a lot.
I'll tell you what, I wanted to get off Twitter all year, like the beginning of this season when it was just nonstop. That Jahmyr Gibbs pick was a waste of a pick. What a wasted pick to grab a guy that early. Yeah, Mind you, he finished, and we're talking about fantasy football.
Yep.
But Jahmyr Gibbs finished as running back 7. Bijan Robinson, in spite of all of the frustration, was still running back 16. Field, when you look at running backs for 2024, knowing that those are the 2 top rookies that came out of this class, is anyone even going to touch like close to that range in 2024?
Let's go ahead and move forward now to tight ends.
All right, okay.
No, it's a bad, for all the great talk of wide receivers this year, it's a bad running back class. Again, bad in terms of how we are assessing these prospects prior to the draft, not how these guys turn out, because look at what happened over the weekend. Some of the key contributors in the running game for the 4 conference championship teams included guys that were not first-round picks. David Montgomery, 3rd-round pick. Obviously, Gus Edwards, undrafted. Isaiah Pacheco, 7th-round pick. Justice Hill, I think he was a 4th-round pick out of Oklahoma State a few years ago, right? I mean, it's a position where you can find diamonds in the rough. I think Blake Corum from Michigan in the right spot is going to be a really good player. My top-rated running back in this year's class is Jonathan Brooks from Texas. Problem is he tore his ACL a couple of months ago, so he might not be ready until the start of the season. He could be a PUP guy. If he had been healthy, he probably would have been a top 45-ish pick for me in this upcoming year's draft. You've got guys like Braylon Allen from Wisconsin, one of the youngest players in the draft, 6'3", 225 pounds, absolute freight train, but Wisconsin, for those that follow college football, they know this already, moved away from their roots. Wisconsin was like Iowa for years, right? Power football, hire Luke Fickell. They run this spread offense, much more like the rest of college football. Braylon Allen was kind of a fish out of water there. His draft stock plummets. So there are not great prospects in terms of where I anticipate them being taken, but I can guarantee you a handful of these guys will end up having useful roles at some point during the 2024 season.
Sure.
But that's the kind of calculation you cannot make until the draft is over.
By the way, where we talk about how strong receiver is going into next season, running back's the opposite. It's just gross right now. So this is not what we want to hear.
No, I mean, we have, but
that's not at all.
But that's not a surprise, because what's happening now is kids at a young age are transitioning to wide receiver because I think there's probably a parental influence here. If you see your kid is, in 6th grade making, trying out for the varsity team, you're probably saying to your child, like, play wide receiver. Because if you're as good now, or if you're as good 8 years from now as you are right now, and you're getting a scholarship, and you can play in the pros, there's just more value in wide receivers.
I was just going to say, I wonder if the future of the running back position is more like Deebo Samuel.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah, like more like 8 to 10% carry shares, maybe to multiple running back, multiple wide receivers.
Honestly,
that could be.
You're telling me, baseball's seen this big thing over the past few years of teams with not starting pitchers but opening inning pitchers. I think I'm like apparently the old man yelling at the clouds, but I think it's sort of dumb. A guy goes out there for like 3 batters, and they're like, all right, and that's enough for you, Daniel.
Next guy's up.
Next guy's up. It's very confusing to me, but again, I'm admitting that I am being very curmudgeon-y in that stance, or on that stance. I wonder if you're right. Maybe that's what, it's everybody gets like 5 to 6 carries. Well, Derrick Henry is a fossil at this point.
I think there'll be an element of that for like situational, be situational closing out games, like a Tyler Algier type player, a Gus Edwards type player. If you're protecting a lead, But yeah, just throughout the game, like playmaking, like long, 3rd and 8s draw, like just kind of how Debo's used. So
and we've already seen so much of that because running backs, like for a long time, right? Like you would watch these bell cow running backs hit like 20 carries a game.
Yeah.
If a running back hits 20 carries in today's NFL, it's like that guy got a lot of usage on the ground. That's the exception, not the rule.
Yeah,
right
it's
now.
funny. Who's the best running back in the NFL? Christian
McCaffrey.
McCaffrey. He had 20 carries against your Lions, right on the number. He hasn't had that for a while. Like that's rare for him to get there.
The only other times that Christian, because I wrote about this, the only other times that he had 20 carries this year was in week 11, weeks 1, 2, and 4.
Mm-hmm. He's also maybe the best catching running back in NFL history, and he no longer catches passes.
That's super weird.
I mean, relative to the rate and where he was during his Carolina days, right? I mean, like he was like 100 and 100 catches was like a very possible thing for him during a season. Like 50 is like a pretty good number for CMC now.
It was like his 4th best year ever in catches. We just talked about what his ceiling is for carries, and he was still the number 1 scoring fantasy running back by almost 100 points.
Yeah, crazy.
And running back just not in a great situation right now.
I'm just going to pull this up just for reference purposes. Christian McCaffrey's catches by season: 80, 107, 116. Those are full seasons. All right, since then. This year, 67 catches.
Wow.
So obviously he's had a bunch of years where he did not play a full season, but this year, 67 compared to 116 his last time. It's still obviously a great number, but compared to where he was on this historic pace, he has changed his game.
That is crazy. Hey, even though CMC is not catching as many passes, we had a plethora of tight ends, especially in this championship round, that are out there doing their thing. Sam Laporta looked unbelievable as a rookie for these Detroit Lions. On the other side of that game, George Kittle, even though he didn't do a whole lot in this one, like he's incredible, right? Travis Kelce on the other side in the Chiefs game. And then Mark Andrews. I mean, you might have had the 4 best tight ends in the NFL playing yesterday. So when you look ahead, Field, there's one tight end that everyone is talking about, and that's Brock Bowers.
Anthony Ferguson. Oh,
stop it.
Did Evans see that?
That was
first
good.
target
That was
all
good.
season.
And he almost got in the end zone on that one.
If he knew where he was, if he knew there was no defender near him, he would have scored.
He would have scored.
You know what? He went to Harvard. He must be an analytics guy. That guy, he didn't know where he was. He's too worried about the numbers. Didn't know where the end zone was.
That's it. That's what happened.
Brock Bowers from Georgia Special, though.
Stefania and I mentioned this the last couple of shows. I want to know if you guys think, have we closed the book on you cannot trust rookie tight ends in fantasy football? Is that a dead rule, or is that still something that you're worried about based on the tight end?
I'll just say it's not dead, but I think you kind of it's where the needle is, right? It used to be like, don't trust them at all. It just never, ever, literally ever happens to. Maybe now, if the situation's right and the player's right, maybe there's more appeal to a late round flyer kind of thing. So I think it's moved. Okay. It's changing, but it's not. I'm not just going to be like, well,
throw it out the window.
Might as well be a 3-year vet.
Yeah, I'm going to throw it out the window for Brock Bowers because he's really good, and he's going to end up in a really good spot. Like I think there's I think 5's like a touch higher. I would just be drafting a different position, but if he goes to the Chargers, obviously. That would be a very special landing spot. If he ends up at like 15 where the Colts are, like that to me is a spot where they have a lot of tight ends, but they could use a difference-making tight end. If the Jets were to take him at pick 10, obviously they could use a difference-making pass catcher.
Absolutely.
And if the 3 receivers are gone, that would be a very valuable spot, even with Tyler Conklin still being there and being a solid player. But that's kind of it. Like the class drops off pretty tremendously after that. There's a Jatavian Sanders from Texas. Probably the next man off the board as Mike is smirking his way through my comments.
I am. I'm just, I'm enjoying this. I love this season. Just connecting players to spots, whether it's free agents or rookies. It's so exciting to think about, put him on the Colts there. And they low-key use the tight end a lot, but there's a lot of guys, to your point, my God, the Jets. Oh, my God, the Chargers. It's just like awesome. It's just fun to think about. I love this season. Mock drafts
are going to be
just connecting.
Like
just your mouth watering over potential landing spots for these guys, whatever position. It's so fun.
Yeah. So it'll be, it's a one-man tight end class for sure. Jatavian Sanders could be like a top 40-ish pick. Really good athlete from Texas. They have great pass catchers that are out in the draft this year. Adonai Mitchell and also Xavier Worthy from wide receiver spots who could be first-round picks as well. But then after that, I would say that like tight end 3 through tight end, call it like 6 or 7, is probably a matter of like what's your preference. There's a bunch of guys who I think could be, I call it a cluster, like 3rd to 4th round tight ends.
Sure. And by the way, this kind of leads back to your question. So you're saying this, aside of Bowers, not a great class last year, was considered to be one of the best tight end classes ever.
Yeah.
So it kind of makes sense that those guys were more impactful in their first year. So, obviously Laporta was a 2nd rounder, had more success than any rookie tight end ever. So that was still kind of an outlier.
Yeah.
But even, Dalton Kincaid or Luke Musgrave at times, there were guys who were contributors. But again, it was considered to be a very strong class as opposed to this one.
If Dalton Kincaid did not have Dawson Knox splitting time with him, I think we would have seen a really, really strong rookie season out of him as well. Because when he did have it by himself, he looked really good for us in fantasy.
Well, that's a reminder, and get ready for me to talk about this 9,000 times in August, about how we always, like, there are very few players who carry value that is similar from the start of the year to the end of the year, right? So, like, I don't know where Dalton Kincaid finished in terms of tight end fantasy points for the full season, but there were weeks in which he was literally unplayable because he was not playing. Then there were weeks where he was literally top 4 for like 4 out of 5 weeks, and it would be hard to have him ranked any lower than that. Dawson Knox being out, the Bills passing the ball a ton, et cetera, et cetera. So pockets of the season often are overshadow our end of season analysis, because the truth is that there are very few guys other than like a Christian McCaffrey and a few others at the top of the board this year who were the same from the start to the finish. For as great as CeeDee Lamb is, and he was the highest scoring wide receiver in fantasy this year, pretty darn compelling case that the better fantasy pick was Tyreek Hill, because for Tyreek Hill, absent the game that he missed, he was dominant every single week. CeeDee Lamb was, and not his fault, but like the Cowboys wouldn't throw him the ball for the first month of the season.
That's right.
Dalton Kincaid, for what it's worth, tight end 11 on the year.
Right. And it probably feels like he was better than that because
Some of his
how
games,
he finished.
Right. So, all right, let's talk about quarterbacks too, because I think this is one of the spots where, like, when
If
we're
the bread is buttered, baby.
if we're looking forward and just looking at this year's draft class, I'm not sure, like, these are the guys that we talk about. CJ Stroud, right? Clear number 1.
Awesome. Yeah.
Anthony Richardson still has some question marks, but I'm really interested
the
to see
upside's super tantalizing
because of that, right? And then you've got both Bryce Young, which we hope that there's more there. The Panthers just need to give him some weapons. And then we'll see what happens with Will Levis. Field, when you look at this year's quarterbacks, how would they compare just to the 2023 rookie class that I just mentioned?
I'll set the over-under on number of quarterbacks taken in the first round at 5.5. I'll take the under. I think it's 5 by the time we get to the end of the process here, which is now less than 3 months away.
And we had 4 this last year.
Yep. 3 are locks. Caleb Williams, Jayden Daniels, Drake Maye. You choose your order. I think those 3 picks are likely to be 1, 2, 3 in the draft. Caleb Williams would be my most likely number 1 pick. I think Bo Nix and J.J. McCarthy end up being first-round picks as well, with Michael Penix Jr. right there on the bubble. Of course, from Washington, unbelievable season.
He's a little older, isn't he? Isn't that the thing? One of the
He
things
is. He's going to be 24 the week after the draft. I think you have to decide whether the age matters to you or not. I am not an age guy. I mean, it's, we're not talking about Brandon.
We got an age guy on the show. It's certainly not you.
We used to have one on the show.
What is he? 24.
Sorry.
I don't want him.
So
what is this, Kenny Pickett all over again? I don't get out of here.
So Caleb Williams, USC, super dynamic. I mean, unbelievable athlete. 90 total touchdowns plus over the past 2 seasons.
That's awesome.
30 plus passing touchdowns in each of the past 2 seasons. 10 plus rushing touchdowns in each of the past 2 seasons. Super dynamic, in and out of the pocket. I think a worthy candidate to be the number 1 overall pick. Drake Maye from UNC. Go ahead.
Can I pause? Do you have, and I know that you might not like this, or this is a tough thing to do, but do you have a player comp? Again, if we didn't watch college football, like, who would you say is like a Caleb Williams-ish?
So he's a harder one to have a player comp for than the next
some of the other guys. Okay,
so
that's fair.
I have not.
Let's pause.
Made my
We'll pause on that
Caleb
one.
Williams player comparison.
Well,
yet.
I've been reading about Williams too, and you just laid out all these stats and all the things he's great at and his skill set. But didn't he like hug his mom one time or something?
Right, he did hug his mom.
So he
and he
can't.
cried.
You can't draft him
Yeah,
first
the
overall.
discourse has been very
I mean, like,
weird.
like people are mad about analytics, but then he gets criticized for that. Like it's just like that's
been a weird. I know. God,
we
forbid.
need to do a whole show on this whole
Oh
topic.
my God.
It
No, I'm
drives me
telling
up
you,
a
like,
wall.
I'm just gear up for some weird Caleb Williams discourse over the next
it's already
3 months.
started.
It's already
It's
started.
already
It will
started.
continue. I think he's awesome. I think he's an extremely worthy first overall pick selection.
Yeah, by the way, super flex draft's going to be fun with that top spot. You and I are in a situation with the
Yeah, we
first
are.
pick.
However,
Caleb or Harrison with that first overall pick. It's super
Or Drake Maye.
Or
Jayden Daniels.
And that'd be my pick.
I was going to say sooner or later I'm going to get to the guy.
Jayden
we wanna
That's
talk
a
Daniels.
fantasy pick over Caleb.
Dual threat quarterback. Yes,
Okay, tell me
because
why.
Jayden Daniels this past season led all Division I college football players in yards per attempt, minimum 100 rushes because there's a bunch of guys that have 8 carries. But I mean, we're talking about one of the most explosive runners in all of college football last year as a quarterback. On top of that, over the past 2 seasons, he has combined for 78 total touchdowns and 7 interceptions, including 40 touchdowns this past year. The kid can absolutely sling it. He's an incredible downfield thrower. I get it. He had 2 awesome wide receivers in both Brian Thomas Jr. and also, of course, Malik Nabers. But imagine this guy now going number 2 overall. Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson. I get it. Dotson's down right now, but I certainly could see a bounce back season next year. Maybe, not guaranteed, but maybe Ben Johnson as the coach there. I mean, that to me would be very, very tantalizing and exciting. The player comp, you're going to hear it 10,000 times between now and April, is Lamar Jackson, because athletically, there's very, very few people on the planet who stack up to Lamar and Jayden Daniels. He's that kind of explosive, not quite as athletic as Lamar Jackson, which, I mean, how many people are? But yeah, I mean, that's going to be the kind of comparisons that you're going to be hearing between now and the start of the draft.
The fact that he had a 10-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio. I know it's college, right? But like that's unreal.
Kind of like Justin Fields, sort of numbers. His Fields were ridiculous at Ohio State. Here's my question though. So Daniels is preferred in fantasy. Why not overall? Why would you not put him against Caleb Williams? Is it like a Mahomes?
I don't think it's that crazy of a thought.
Yeah, like is it like a Mahomes, Josh Allen sort of fantasy versus reality?
I think that there is. I don't think it's a guarantee that Caleb Williams. I don't think it's a guarantee that Jayden Daniels can't go number 1 overall. I think all three of these guys could go number 1 overall. It's if I were to imagine some of the tiebreakers, I think I have Caleb Williams like the superlative passer of these three, and as a result, to me, the number 1 player in this class. He also is younger than Jayden Daniels. And Daniel mentioned the age. It doesn't bother me as much, but if you're trying to nitpick and you've got a 21 versus a 23-year-old prospect, the Browns, as an example, a team who is definitely analytically inclined, go check their draft history. They only draft young guys, right? It's been a little bit harder over the past few years.
Whedon, who was 29.
That's before this regime.
Okay.
It's been tricky this past couple of years because there's been so many old prospects with the COVID year. But there are teams that skew extremely young by design in the draft. If the Bears felt like Jayden Daniels and Caleb Williams was a close one and the toss-up could be as simple as the age, then that would be sort of an advantage that Caleb Williams has. But I think for fantasy, we're talking about that kind of rushing upside, and obviously it depends on where he lands as a landing spot, but he just completely changes the math of your offense and your opponent's defense the second he steps on the field. Needs to probably take a fewer hits. The body armor is going to be a talking point over the next couple of months. He was at one point 180 pounds in college. He's now up to like 205. But think about how much we talked about Bryce Young a year ago. It's going to come back up once again. And then Drake Maye is like, dropped off from quarterback factory, 6'4", 230 pounds, unbelievable athlete as well. Not at the level of Jayden Daniels, obviously, but very functional athlete. The comparison you're going to hear a ton is Justin Herbert. Had amazing season in 2022. Did Drake Maye? He won all 4 of the major awards available in the ACC, including like freshman and newcomer of the year. The only other player to do that in conference history, Jameis Winston, who I know he's a different player in the pros than he was in college, but he was one of the great college players of the past quarter century. So Drake Maye, to me, he might have the best combine throwing workout. Like the guy is a strike thrower in the middle of the field. Unbelievable player. Just didn't have that great of a season this year during a year in which Jayden Daniels did. He literally won the Heisman Trophy.
Mike, do you have anything? Otherwise, I got questions I'm going to ask, but I want to.
I'm just thinking through where we size these up compared to like a CJ Stroud, for example, who, it doesn't seem like he had quite the pedigree or the draft grade of a Caleb Williams, or maybe in your mind a Jayden Daniels. Certainly Caleb, I feel like is one of the most hyped up in a long time.
Yeah,
like going back to Andrew Luck, maybe. It's been a while. So, I think Stroud. You guys and I were talking about this before the show, which is like CJ Stroud, for example, maybe doesn't have quite the pedigree, but we've seen it. We've seen him play at that level. Yeah. So I feel like he's the safest fantasy option going forward of all of these guys because it looks like he's maybe a top 5 quarterback in this league going forward. Totally. Whereas Caleb might be the best quarterback in the league for the next decade, but we don't know for sure. Like we don't know. These guys bust all the time. So, I feel like Stroud is still the best from the recent drafted quarterbacks, but after that, Anthony Richardson missed most of this season. We don't know for sure on him as much as we like him, but Caleb Williams, Jayden Daniels, maybe Drake Maye right there.
Here's where I think we're comfortable at right now talking about. I'll start with Caleb and Jayden Daniels, only because Caleb is the special prospect. Jayden just has a different avenue to fantasy upside that Drake has some of, but not as much of, which is the rushing ability. Is that, as we've noted over the past couple of years, but it really came into focus again this year, right? We've got like this tier of guys that are that's indisputable, right? The Mahomes, Allen, Hurts, Lamar, healthy Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, CJ Stroud, call it like 7-ish, and I may be forgetting 1 or 2 there. I apologize if so, but like those 7
got 'em, yeah.
feel to me like really sort of locked in. Then you've got the next tier of guys who like when things are going great, Trevor Lawrence and I think
Fields,
Jordan Love and Justin
Kyler Murray,
right? Like
Richardson.
if things go right, it can be like very, 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 very good. But you could also, it hasn't been great consistently or hasn't been great long enough, right? Like Jordan Love got hot again at the end of the season, got a really bright future, but until we see it for a full year, you can't quite put him in that category as like fantasy, no doubt about it, stud. That's where those guys fit in, right? That like, got to see it first, but like if you told me like your dynasty ranks, if someone said like Kayla's my quarterback 8 in dynasty, I'd say that's justifiable.
Sure.
Yeah.
Do you think that there is
sometimes
anything...
the devil you don't know versus the devil you do know, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you think that there's anything, and I'm just a stupid fan projecting this in
Not
my
at
head,
all.
right? But like coming out of last year's draft where everyone is talking about, boy, I'll bet the Panthers wish they had taken CJ Stroud. Knowing that you've got 3 incredible quarterbacks at the top, is this going to be one of those like, I know teams already put so much effort and energy into making sure they have all the puzzle pieces figured out, but seeing what happened last year, is there any more like, I don't know even the right way to say it. Is there more on the table that teams have got to figure out when they see, hey, just last year, if the Panthers had just taken CJ Stroud, maybe they would have been in a better spot? Or is that, do teams or the NFL or do people look at it as though that's not a CJ Stroud versus Bryce Young thing? Bryce just doesn't have the weapons that CJ potentially has on his team.
I think here's my takeaway from what happened last year is twofold. One, I don't think there's going to be a trade up to pick 1 because the price is going to be so prohibitive. The teams are going to say, you really got to nail it. And if you don't nail it, then it's going to it could potentially sink your franchise. 2 is the minute you draft a quarterback, I don't care what your roots are. I don't care what your background is. If you're a defensive minded head coach, you must make every decision within your franchise that is geared towards making that young player better. It sounds fundamental, but clearly teams don't do that. I mean, clearly, right? Like I get it. Adam Thielen had a great season relative to expectations. Adam Thielen should not be the number 1 wide receiver for rookie quarterback at 33 years old. He just shouldn't be, right? He's an unbelievable player, right? The guy's been a Pro Bowler multiple times. But you need to have something, you need to have much more dynamic players around him. And you got to have a coach you're not going to fire after 11 games around your rookie quarterback as well.
Yeah, you said something interesting there, though, which opens a whole nother can of worms, which is you don't think there's a trade up to 1. What happens then? Because they're not going to, you're going to take a quarterback and trade Fields?
Trade Fields.
That would be my thought, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I mean,
interesting.
There's
a lot of hot takes on that.
Of course, there could be a trade up. I think it's unlikely to be a massive, major one from like 8 to 1 because I just like
knowing what they had to give up last year.
Well, the thing is, you can artificially cross off Team 4 Arizona and Team 5 Los Angeles with Herbert, Team 6 the Giants with Daniel Jones and his contract for 1 more season, Team 7 the Titans, Will Levis, Team 8 Atlanta. That's the first one, but then you're like, is Atlanta going to send the farm to get pick 1? Or with a new head coach that has time on his side, will they say, let's try to sort of get an upgrade, but also not spend all of our booty right now on a quarterback?
I was just going to say, I think it's interesting, too, if a team at 2 or 3 wants to move up to 1 because they have a preference and give up a second-round pick or something like that. Because it doesn't affect the Bears if they're going to stick with Fields. They would just take Marvin Harrison third.
If I'm the Commanders or I'm the Patriots, I'm standing pat.
Yeah.
The Patriots, in some ways, have the hardest job because their roster might be the worst out of those 3. But in some ways, they have the easiest job because your job is to wait for who gets the 3rd and just take that quarterback. Right? And like the pressure's off you, right? The pressure is pretty immense, maybe even on the Commanders at pick 2, because if Caleb is viewed as consensus 1.01, people aren't going to decry the Bears for taking him. But if he goes 1, and it's this debate all the way until April about Drake Maye versus Jayden Daniels, that's a pressure cooker situation for a new GM.
Are you doing any consulting for Washington? I'm just wondering, because I'm just trying to figure out which way they're leaning for my mock draft.
No, I haven't. You're
not going to be doing that. Okay.
If they hire one of you 2 as the head coach, then maybe, but up to this point, I haven't.
Yeah. I think Mike would be the only one that's in line for head coach job because I've not worked at PFF, unlike some of the other guys.
That's right.
I do know Adam Peters, though. My first year as an entry-level grunt with the Patriots, there were 3 men who were scouting assistants at the time. A man named Francie Jourdain has gone on to great success as a scout, including he was the scout that found Malcolm Butler.
Nice.
Brian Flores, you guys may have heard of him.
Of course, heard of him.
And Adam Peters, the new Washington Commanders GM.
Love that.
It's actually insane the number of people that were in the office at that time that have gone on to either like GM, coaching jobs. It's like, I do not take that for granted. I understand that, I know, people have said the Bill Belichick tree has not thrived elsewhere. I'm not going to sit here and debate whether these guys are good head coaches or not. But I think it was really cool to think about that much mental horsepower in one spot at one time.
Yeah, but you're part of that, right? You consider yourself part of that Bill Belichick
coaching
tree.
Yeah.
So you've done well.
What? In my defense, I have never lost a game as an NFL head coach.
That's right.
That's true.
That's
Never.
right.
That's true. Undefeated.
Last question I have for you.
Analytics for you right there,
Hey!
people. Boom.
Last question I have. You talked about the Falcons at 9.
Yeah.
Do you think if they don't go one of the 8, if they don't go one of those early quarterbacks, is that a JJ McCarthy, Michael Penix conversation, or is that
they got if those guys nail the pre-draft process, Bo Nix, JJ McCarthy, Michael Penix Jr. could go off the board as soon as pick 8.
That's going to be something else. We have 5 quarterbacks in the top 15 or something. We haven't seen that.
That 2 years, 3 years. Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, Mac Jones.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Other than that, has not happened often. Yeah.
That's right.
Yes,
that one.
Yes, I am not disappointed in that. Listen, Bo Nix does not have the overall physical traits as the 3 guys at the very top of the board. My only ask for fans that are thinking about Bo Nix is divorce yourself of what he was as a player at Auburn. That Bo Nix is long gone. The Oregon Bo Nix, new, improved, and an outstanding player.
Love it.
Yeah, he was awesome this past year.
And that's why teams sometimes draft those younger guys because they're not the finished product yet.
Right.
A guy that's 23, 24, crushing at the college level might be at his ceiling.
Totally.
Whereas a guy that's 21 and has a breakout a guy has a breakout season at 21 versus 23, they could still be getting better. That's part of why you lean that way.
Totally. So there's so much to do over the next, 90-ish days.
You know what's crazy? Normally at this point, I am right with you, Field. I am belly button deep in draft talk.
Yeah.
But because the Lions made the NFC Championship game, this is the first year in my life I've literally not even looked at a single draft prospect. Usually you spend a month worth of hey, who are we taking in the top 5?
Shout out to the Lions, man.
I'm so excited. I've never been more excited to have the 29th overall pick in my entire life. But shout out to the 49ers. Shout out to the Chiefs. It's going to be fun. We will talk about them more next week in our preview of the Super Bowl. But for now, thank you guys for hanging out with us. This was a ton of fun. We'll be back next Monday like we always are at 2:30. And also check out First Draft, ESPN 2 on Mondays at 2 p.m. Field Yates, Mel Kiper Jr., always a good time to be able to learn more about some prospects that maybe you don't know about.
Can't wait.
We love you
Next
guys.
show's Friday.
We'll see you next week.
Peace.
See ya.
I like that we have a laugh track now or a clap track
I
now.
know, right?
It's because we're a comedy podcast.
Nailing it.